special cast to all things local guides. Yeah!
Welcome, folks, to the Go Loco podcast YouTube channel. My name is Adrian, and I'm a level 8 local guide, and I'm your host for today's virtual meetup for fellow local guides. Today, I'm doing a hands-on workshop on how to use Snapseed, which is a photo editing software by Google. The goal is to improve your photos before you upload them to Google Maps, because quality contributions are very important. We are only doing minor edits because we want the photos to be as representative of the real world as possible. So nothing stylish. Okay, this workshop is pitched at a very, very basic level. Basically, someone who has never done much or, if at all, photo edits and never used Snapseed before. So if you are a beginner, I hope that you'll find this workshop useful. And before we go on, let me remind everyone here that this is a recorded session, and once the video is ready, I'll upload it to the Go Loco Podcast YouTube channel for the public to access. You can obviously head there to rewatch this, and if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and it would certainly make my day if you subscribe to the channel as well. And just before we start the presentation, let's do a quick round of introduction and get a brief intro from everyone. So if you could just give me your name, your local guide level, and where you are from. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yep, I can hear
Hello.
you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
So, my name is Shah Mohammad Sultan. Basically, my nickname is Shahid, and I'm local guide level 9, and I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Hello, I am Kullanpal from Kolkata, India. Recently, I am a local guide level 8, and thank you for hosting such type of meetup, and this will help to quality contribute on map. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure, no problems. It's quite a small group today. Yes, it is a pretty small group today. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll just continue on with the workshop, and basically it's going to be a very intimate workshop then, and you can ask me all the questions about Snapseed if you like to. Okay, so what I'm going to begin with is obviously the presentation. Yesterday I did session 1, which is basically a repeat. Today is a repeat of yesterday's session, so identical material. But what I came across in yesterday's session was some certain areas I could improve on. So what I'm going to do for this session is that I'm going to cut out some of the slides that are not too important. You will get the slides later on in a recap post, so you get the whole full slides anyway. But just to make things go faster, I am going to skip a few slides, okay? So hopefully it's nothing too difficult. I'm sure you've done photo editing software before or used photo editing software before, so this should be a very simple one for you. Okay, so this is the agenda for today's workshop. We are doing obviously the introduction, and then we're going to do a quick overview of Snapseed. This is a bit where it's quite a long bit of the presentation, and I'm going to cut it down. And then we're going to cover the basic tools, which are just 3 tools that I think is all you need to do very, very basic and simple editing to make sure your photo uploads to Google Maps are as good quality as possible. And then we'll go through some practical examples, and then I'll talk through the homework, and if you've got any further questions, you can ask me at the end of the course. If you want to ask me any questions throughout the course or throughout the workshop, just feel free to interrupt me and ask me straight away. You don't have to wait until the end of the workshop. Also, I am not looking at the chat window in the Google Meet page, so because I got too many windows on my screen at the moment. So if you have any questions, don't put it in the chat because I won't be able to see it. Just ask me straight away and I'll help you out, okay? Okay, cool. So let's begin.
Okay.
Okay, so, oh wait, have you both used Snapseed before?
Yes,
Yes, I used
several times.
last 3 months ago.
Okay, so I would say, I would guess that you guys are very competent in using Snapseed. Pretty good at Snapseed, I guess.
Hello.
Because it just makes it easy for me to gauge how much I need to focus on certain areas.
Okay.
Right, I couldn't quite hear that too well. Anyway, I presume that you know some level of Snapseed
This is
functionality.
Android version.
Yeah. Sorry, your background traffic is causing your microphone to be quite sensitive there, but it's all right. Okay, I'll just continue on with the workshop, and then obviously if you got any questions, just feel free to interrupt me. Okay, so I'm going to skip through a lot of these pages here because the whole idea of the presentation is to make sure that anybody who's never used Snapseed before knows where everything is, and they also know what the buttons are on the screen. So obviously if you used Snapseed before, you know all that. So I'm just going to skip through all this. The one thing that I would like to highlight is that whenever you do editing for photos for Google Maps, I would avoid using anything from the looks section. And also another thing that came up in yesterday's session was that some of the attendees, in their Snapseed ad, they were seeing styles rather than looks. So I'm not sure why on mine it's saying looks, although we are both on Android and we're both on the same version, but mine says looks and theirs says style. So not sure why. Okay. Hi Nuhu, we just started, so don't worry. I'll just continue on with the workshop. So if you got any questions along the way, feel free to ask. Okay. Hi Nuhu, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
so
Arjun.
just a little bit of intro here. So if you got any questions, just feel free to ask along the way. I'm not looking at the chat window, so don't put your questions there because I won't see it. Okay. All right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. So I was saying that in Snapseed app, if you're doing any edits for photos to be uploaded to Google Maps, don't use the looks section. Some people will see as styles. I wouldn't recommend that because the modifications being done by those are very pronounced. They're quite heavy. So it's a little bit too much for something that you want to upload to Google Maps. Any updates that you want to, any edits you want to do to Google, photos to upload to Google Maps should be very minor and should only be very simple stuff, okay? So all of this you can basically ignore. And the one thing that we want to look at is obviously this tool section here. And there are 28 sets of tools. And what I've done is that to make it easy for everybody to digest all 28 sets of tools, I've actually divided them into 4 different categories. So you got basic, advanced, artistic, and creative. These are names that I've given it myself. Okay, so this is me doing my weird organization stuff. But basic is the ones where I feel is the most basic set of tools that you need to edit your photos for Google Maps. And they are rotate, crop, and tune image. Those are the 3 stuff that you only need to have. Advanced is always nice to have or to know how to use them. So things like perspective, white balance, curves, healing, and vignette. Okay, so those things are nice to have, but it's not entirely necessary. Obviously, some photos, like if you're adjusting the perspective, you do need the perspective tools, but we're not going to touch on that today. Or at least I think I'm not going to touch on it today. It's not in my slides, but I'm sure people will ask me about it at some point. And then artistic is very, very heavy set of looks and filters that, again, it's like completely ignore it. And creative, there are a few in there that also are quite useful. So in my next slide, I actually show you which ones in the creative side, which I think are quite useful to know. But again, it's not entirely critical to use when you're doing any edits on photos. So things like detail, selective, and HDRscape. Okay. Export, I think everybody here knows how to do the export and save. So I'll skip on that. And the settings here, I think there's nothing critical here to talk about, so I'll skip on that. Tutorials, if you haven't seen this, it's actually a really good set of tutorials in Snapseed. You can access it from the overflow menu, so the 3 dots there. And tutorials have a lot of video and text tutorials that take you step by step and teach you how to use the tools. But I had a look at all the tutorials in there, and majority of them are on quite advanced set of tools. So all the basic stuff they don't cover, which is a bit of a shame. But I guess they assume that most people know how to do the basic stuff. They also have the help and feedback section, which I think is really useful, especially if you want to suggest any new features to the developers. You can do that through the feedback bit. And there's also links to help centers and YouTube channels and a Facebook page in case you want to access more resources online. So a lot of these things are really helpful. I found the Help Center actually to be really useful because I was using that for some of the information to be used in this presentation. So I was using it too. Image details, I don't know if you ever paid attention to this, but whenever you take a photo, obviously it's going to have some information stored inside. If you want to know what those information are, you can always hit on the image details. And that's basically the icon with the little eye on it, the little circle of the eye in it. And one of the things that's interesting in there is that it also stores your location data. Just give me a moment. I got Falguni entering. Hi, Falguni. Hello. You didn't miss much, but basically what it is that if you got any questions, just interrupt me and ask the question straight away because I'm not looking at the chat window. So feel free to ask me anytime. Okay. We're just going through the various sections in Snapseed and just making sure that everybody knows what everything is and where it can be found. I was talking about the location data and image in your photos. And one thing that you have to be careful about if you're sharing that photo to friends or to whoever it is, that location data will get shared as well. Unless you're using Google Photos, in Google Photos, there's a setting where you can actually request Google Photo to strip the location data out. So that's something that's really handy if you're very privacy conscious. Okay. View edits, we'll go through this in the practical section. And skip. Okay, so common photo problems. Just wanted to know from all of you, what are the common photo problems that you come across normally when you see a photo on Google Maps or wherever? Okay, so you can unmute yourself, you can tell me what it is. So any ideas of what a common photo problem is?
I mean, I think lack of perspective.
Yep.
Maybe you'd see a photo that is, tilted. It's not portrait, it's not landscape at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when someone takes a picture of the sea or the ocean, you can see immediately where it's tilted.
It's not balanced. Yeah.
That's a good one. Any other examples of common photo problems that we come across?
I would like to ask about the tall buildings. Usually there is a crowd in front of tall buildings, and if we try to capture, we will capture humans also, and we cannot crop it sometimes. It looks pathetic. So what to do when we want to capture a tall building?
Don't. Yeah, okay, that's not the right answer. It's very difficult, you see, because I have the same problem, and it's almost like there's not much you can do unless you can find a location almost like quite far away to be able to take a picture of the tall building. So it's really, really difficult. If you take it at the base of the building and you try to take a picture up, it's not a very good photo sometimes because it's just too tall and it doesn't show everything in the photo. So I guess a compromise which I would suggest is that focus on the areas that are important of the building. So the main entrance, any accessible areas like staircase or ramps and stuff like that. So if you cannot take a picture of the full building, the complete building itself, then at least take pictures of the main entrance and the entryway and stuff like that. So that is just a common problem. We just cannot take pictures of tall buildings. It's just really, really difficult.
And many times when we are able to take the whole picture using the wide angle of the camera, the picture sometimes is slant or it shows tilted one side. So how can we make it straight? I mean, I have to struggle many times to make it straight. So it looks uneven even after making it straight.
Yeah, so if it's a simple rotation, that you can use a rotate tool to do that. That's very straightforward, I think. But if it's like a perspective angle thing, you can use a perspective tool. I can cover that towards the end of the workshop. It's kind of it falls outside the basic stuff.
Yeah, the perspective main is the perspective thing. I always find it problematic while editing the building pictures.
Yep, I'll try to kind of I'll touch on it. If we have time, I'll touch on it. Yep.
Well, for me, because I use an iPhone. Most times when you take a picture, when you're trying to crop or maybe give it a better perspective, I think it does it automatically. It gives you, then you could maybe, if it doesn't suit you, then you can maybe do it a little bit better. You can do it vertically, horizontal, and then maybe the whole image.
Yeah. So do you use iOS editing tools to edit your photos?
Well, not most of the time, yeah. But
Yeah.
for things like the basic ones, yeah,
Yeah.
I use that, like the
Okay,
inbuilt one, and then I use Snapseed for the, they have more options for filter and tuning images. So
Yes.
that's what I use Snapseed for.
Yep. Okay. So you're a pro already. You don't need to be in this
Oh,
workshop.
no, not really. That's why I'm here. I want to know. That's why
This
I'm
is the
here. I would
basic
like
one.
to
This is the basic
get
one. So it's
more.
really simple.
Okay.
Okay. So besides all those things, I'm gonna just show you the list that I've come up with. I'm sure you go, those ones. Okay. So we talked about the horizon not being straight. I call it a crooked horizon. Okay. And then we also have problems where it's poor composition. So sometimes somebody is taking either too close to the subject, or they're too far away, or they have a composition that's quite bland and boring, which is not critical, but I always try to aim for the best. And also you get imbalanced photos. So for instance, if you have a big picture and your subject is this small in the whole picture and everything else there, so it's you're not focusing on the right things, you're not balancing things up properly. And obviously, if your lighting is poor, then you're going to get situations where it's too dark or too bright. You can get issues with out of focus because you're not focusing properly. Motion blur if you're moving too quickly, especially if you're taking night shots. And then you also have white balance issue if you're taking photos indoors where you have artificial lights and the camera just can't work it out properly. And also you have things where people are over editing their photos. So one of the common cell tools that I see people overuse is HDR. They use it too strongly and it becomes, you can see by looking at the sky, the moment they use HDR too much, the sky has a bit of a halo around buildings and objects. So it just feels very unnatural, and that's not something that I would recommend. So those photos that you see in the slide here, there's like some examples there where you got a crooked horizon, you got a white balance issue, you got an over editing of the waffle and ice cream, and you got someone's taken a shot too close and all you see is just the rice, the grain of rice. You don't actually know what the dish is. Okay. And these are kind of like my tips for photo composition, or photo tips, I guess. So one of the things that I always recommend to people is that when you take a photo of anything, a subject, make sure that you give enough space around it so that you have enough space to edit things. So for instance, like this building here is a cafe. I would actually have a margin set around it. And this usually comes in really handy when you need to rotate some things, or if you need to crop it again to get to the right composition that you want to. So if you give yourself enough space around the edges, then at least you've got something to play with. And I'll show you some examples later on of when the building's too close to the edge, then that's when you go like, I can't really crop this because I'm already cropping into the building. Okay. This is another example here if you're taking a picture of a food dish. Okay, so again, give yourself some space around it. You don't always have to go so close. You can always just take it further apart and take that. And obviously, if you have a really good camera, for instance, like a digital SLR, and you got a good megapixel resolution on it, you can obviously take even further away, and then you can crop it however way you want it. And then obviously, you have the rule of thirds. I'm sure you've heard of this many times. I'm sure you know all about it, but I'm just going to really quickly talk about it. So rule of thirds is basically when you divide the picture into equal 3 portions, and horizontally and vertically, so you get something like this. And basically what you want to do is that you want to line up your subject either along the lines or at the intersecting points. You don't have to be exactly on it, and you don't always have to follow it. It just kind of depends, but I follow it and it works for me, and I feel that it makes the picture look more dynamic. So in this case, you have the lady is walking down, and you also have the group of people who are sitting down, and they're lined up to the rule of thirds. And yeah, it kind of works for this. So another example here is that I've taken a picture of an ice cream, and this is kind of how I always tend to take a picture of food items if I can. Not always I can do it this way, but if you think about this ice cream cup, you would think I would just take a portrait shot of it because the ice cream is quite tall, so you would take a portrait shot of it. But I always tend to prefer to do landscape. And so when I do on a landscape, what I tend to do is that I want to show the background. So what you see is that you see the ice cream, but you also see the ice cream store behind it. So it kind of does a two bits of information for the people who are seeing this. So I always like to do it this way. You can see a bit of the background, the cafe, and you also get to see the bit of food. And in this sense, I also follow the rule of thirds and just line it up this way. Okay. And if the rule of thirds doesn't work well in certain circumstances, you would then use a symmetry if that's possible. Hi, Jason. Welcome to the workshop. We're only just going through the presentations here, so don't worry about it. We're going to go through the more practical stuff soon. And I've seen your photos, so you know what you're doing. So, yeah, you know what you're doing. Okay. Anyway, just to let you know as well that I'm not looking at the chat window. So if you got any questions for me, just interrupt me at any point and ask the questions, okay? So here I am, I'm talking about symmetry. So if you have a photo that is symmetrical, you want to line it up that way. So like this building here. And also if you have a place like this, it's also symmetrical. And it's also this bits of elements in here where it's also a rule of thirds because the chairs and tables are on the bottom third and then the ceiling bits on the 2/3 above it, okay? So you kind of try to adjust everything. And my biggest tip for anybody who's taking photos is that you want to take your time to compose your shot because if you get your shot done correctly on the first attempt, or not the first attempt, sorry, when you get it done properly, you don't have to worry too much about editing it. And it makes your editing life a lot easier as well. Okay, so get your photos done correctly with the right lighting and your edits will be a lot easier. Okay, some other tips I would say is that if you're using your mobile phone and you don't really know this yet, you can tap on the screen to get your camera to focus on that particular subject, okay? That makes sure that your focus is always correct. And that really helps, especially when you're doing a close shot. Sometimes the camera will focus on the background rather than on the foreground. So you want to do that. And obviously, as I said, lighting is very important. So you want to make sure that let's say if you're taking a photo of a food item, you want to make sure that your food item is lit up well, but you also don't want your shadow to fall on it. So it's very easy to have the light behind you and your shadow is falling onto your food item. And that kind of just spoils it a little bit. Okay, so we are going to the tool section. I'm sure you know where they are. There's a tune image, rotate, and crop are the three tools that I'll be covering today. I know that all of you are pros, so I'm going to touch briefly on this and we're going to do some examples and then we can do some more advanced stuff if time permits. Okay? And I'll skip all this because you already know how to use Snapseed. Just want to say that my preference, I don't know for other people, is that when I crop, I tend to crop with 16:9 first because I like the extra wide look. And then I do a 3:2 for standard look or 4:3 if I need the extra height. And then 3 is when I find a shape that doesn't fit anything I want it to fit into. Again, that usually is the menus. The menus are always weird shapes, so I always do a free crop on it. But I always prefer a 16:9. I don't think Google Map cares, I think. Although sometimes I feel that the photos that they pick for the hero photos tend to be the wide ones, so I don't know. That's just my preference, I guess. Tune image, we'll go through it in the practical section, and so this is the practical side. Okay, so I do not know whether you want to follow me and doing the edits or not, but if you don't have your phone with you or you already know your stuff, you can just watch and listen as well. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to switch my presentation to a different app. Okay, so I'm just going to stop that and switch it. Okay, so I'm using BlueStacks, which is a software that you can install on your computer, and then you can install, it's basically an Android emulator, and you can install Android apps into it to run it on your computer if you want to. And I'm using it to obviously run Snapseed so that you can see all the edits I'm doing here. So I'm sure you know how to use Snapseed, how to open a window, open a photo. So I'm just going to open one up here. So I've taken photos that you guys have added to the group photo. If I don't have your photo in here yet, it's probably because you added it just before I done all this download. So your photos will be in here somewhere. So the 6 examples that I wanted to go through, which is one outdoor building scene, one indoor building scene, 2 food items, one from the side, one from the top, and then the 2 menus here, one monochrome and one colorful menu. So I'm going to go for, because yesterday's session I went with the archway, so today I'm going to try something different. I'm going to go for the farmer's crib, which is an indoor cafe thing. So I'm going to edit that first, and then you can see how I do it normally, and then you can question like, why in the world do you do it that way? Because it's so inefficient. Hopefully not, but that may happen, who knows. Anyway, this is Farmer's Crib. It is a bubble tea store, and it's not like I like bubble tea so much that I always go to it, but I like cold drinks, so I tend to find places with cold drinks, and I tend to try it out. So this is a shot that I took of Farmer's Crib. It is, not to say I've chosen this not because it's not correct, but this is what I've taken, and this is what I would normally edit to then upload to Google Maps. So I have not done that yet, but I'm going to show you what I normally do to edit a photo like this. It's very simple. So I normally start from I guess I call it the big picture view, and then I make my way to the details. So what I mean by that is that I start with rotation first to try to correct any incorrect rotation, and then I do crop, and then after crop, I then do a tune image to then correct all the lightings on it, okay? So I'll find my tools and do a rotate. You can already see that the picture is not quite straight, and what Snapseed does is that it auto adjusts for me, so it's done a minus 0.7 degree rotation, which is kind of there, but not quite there. So if you look at the top here, it's not quite straight, and also the side is not quite straight, but it's not that bad. Okay, so again, this is just going up to Google Maps. You're not putting this to some exhibition somewhere, so it doesn't have to be so perfect. So you can either accept this, or you can still play around with it. If you never used Snapseed before, all you need to do is just swipe left or right, and you can adjust the rotation on it. But what you notice that Snapseed does is that when you rotate it, it tries to make sure that the photo still covers the whole shape here, so there's no empty spots. And to do that, it has to zoom in and out. So when you do that, you tend to lose a lot of the spaces around it, and that's why I recommend that you always leave yourself a margin around the subject you're taking. Okay, so I'm just going to try to guess what it should look like. Something like that, I think, which is like a -1. It's still not quite straight because I think there's a perspective issue here, but we're not going to go into that. So anyway, that's how you rotate it, and that's it done. The next thing that I always do is crop. And again, it's like I like a 16:9 ratio, and by coincidence, this actually fits in really well because there's nothing really in the ceiling that is very important for people to see, and also nothing on the floor for people to see. So you can either do it this way, where it just crops right there, so you can include the stand that's at the side here, or you can kind of center it, and you don't care about the bottom bit here. Okay, so it's entirely up to you. I am going to probably center it a bit, so I'm going to keep it something like that. Okay, and then the next bit is tune image, which is again very simple here. You got a set of parameters in here, and all you do is just swipe up and down to change the parameter, and swipe left and right to change the values on it. And also at the bottom screen here, if you can tap that, normally this is not on by default. Normally you just see this icon here, but you can tap that and you can see the histogram. So if you know your histogram, you will find this little histogram here to be very useful because it shows you your tonal range across your photo from your dark, which is your left-hand side. So the left bit here is your dark tones, which are your shadows. And the right-hand side here is your high tones, which are your highlights, and then the mid-tones are in the middle. So in this picture, it's basically telling me that majority of the picture are in the lower side. So that's why the picture is quite dark. And you also have some brief bright spots in the bit here, just slightly off center, okay? So what I want to do is that I want to adjust the brightness and kind of bring it back up slightly. Personally, I don't use the histogram that much because I just rely on what I'm seeing and kind of my style of editing. Obviously, everybody has their own style. Some people like high contrast. Some people like low contrast. It's up to you. I kind of like to keep it in the middle-ish somewhere. And also another thing to pay attention to, if you're editing on your mobile phone, you want to make sure that the brightness of your mobile screen is set to quite a high level, because if you set your screen brightness to be quite low because you're trying to save battery, what happens is that when you're editing a photo, you might think that the photo is dark, but actually it's not. So you actually compensate and make it too bright in your editing. Okay, so in this case, it's all very subjective. I think the brightness should be somewhere about there. And again, what I tend to do is that I just make my way down each parameter and see whether I need to adjust anything. So for contrast, I don't think I need to do anything because there's already quite a lot high dark areas and bright areas. Okay, Shahid, sorry about that. Hope to catch you in the recap post, and you can see the videos.
Thank you everyone. Thank you. I'm leaving now. Wish you
Okay.
best.
Bye, Shahid.
So contrast, I don't think I need to change much in here. Saturation, it is already quite saturated. So I'm just going to leave it for now because I'm going to adjust some other things first and see whether the colors will go up or not. Ambience, if you don't know what ambience is, I actually had a look at the help section in the Snapseed app to help explain it better, because I know it by having used it often enough, but I don't know how to explain it. So with ambience, what it is that if you swipe to the right, what it does is that it tries to do something that's very similar to HDR, which is trying to balance the bright and dark areas in your photo. So what it does is that if you have lots of areas which is dark and lots of areas which is bright, let's say like this, sorry, dark and bright, what it does is that it wants to bring it so that it's closer together, so that the differences are not that much. So you notice here that on a very extreme plus 100 ambience, you get a much more balanced light across, whereas if you go all the way back to the original, there are a lot of dark areas around. But however, if you go to the left-hand side, it does something slightly different where, yes, the dark areas get darker and the white areas get whiter, but also your white areas start to glow, okay? I don't personally like to use glow at all. I find it very weird because it doesn't look natural at all. If you are trying to achieve that style of look for a personal project, go ahead and use it. But if you're doing it for Google Maps, I would definitely recommend to not use anything that glows because it just looks really weird. So anyway, in this case, what you want to do is that you want to push it up slightly high just to bring out sort of darker areas so that you can see more of the details. You don't have to go so high because if you go too high, it then looks very unnatural. And also what you notice is that when your ambience goes up, the colors become more and more saturated. So one thing that I always do is that if I ever push my ambience quite high, I go back to my saturation and I just bring it back down slightly, okay? Because I don't want it to look too weird. So yeah, it's gone down by minus 12. And then this highlights, which I think, okay. Again, if you're not sure about how to use all these parameters, I always recommend just go to the extreme. So you know immediately what the two extremes are and you just try to find a balance in the middle somewhere that you're happy with. Okay. I'm trying to make sure that the photo doesn't look too flat as well, because there's a risk of doing that. I'm going to up the contrast just to make it pop a little bit. And I think that's kind of the look that I would normally try to achieve. At the top right corner here, there's a button that lets you see what the original picture looks like. So this is the original, which is a bit darker, and this is the brighter version of it. And the saturation, the colors are not that far apart, so I managed to maintain that without making it look unnatural. The only other thing that I would mention about this is that it does look a little bit warm, and normally I would use white balance or, actually, sorry, there is a warm, sorry, silly me, there is a warm section here as well, so you can kind of adjust it. I normally use white balance rather than warm because I think white balance does a better job. But this is also very simple, and again, it's that you swing to the left, you make it bluish or colder, and you swing to the right, you make it hotter or warmer and more orangey thin. So to me, the original has a bit of a warm glow to it. So I'm just going to shift it slightly to the left to make sure that the white walls are white rather than warmish. So I think that's a bit too much here. So I'll probably come to somewhere here-ish. Okay, so you can kind of see the difference. That's more warmer, and then this is kind of more colder, brighter-ish. Okay, so this is kind of how I normally do an edit for something like this. I do not know whether everybody else does it differently, or they agree with it or disagree with it. Please agree. So, nope, no comments. Okay. I'll close this one. I'll not save it, I think, because
How to edit that? I mean, this I don't get the word. The name, it is a neon sign. So sometimes the color bursts out. I mean, it starts leaking. It's not clear in the picture sometimes. So
yeah.
can we use a sharpening tool for that?
So there, it's kind of hard to comment on it without actually seeing a picture. But yes, you can. If the problem is because it's not sharp enough, you can use the sharpening tool. But you can also, let's say if the problem is because the colors are not correct, because they're too bright, or they're washed out, or anything like that. Sorry, I can't hear you.
The ambience is a bit dark and the signboard is in neon color. So usually the sign is not captured clearly. So when you try to edit it, the whole thing gets sharp. So it doesn't look natural.
Yeah, okay. So you can apply a mask to it to only apply the effects on certain areas. So
I'm not sure how to do that in Snapseed.
Let me see the time. I'll show it really, really quickly because it's not a basic tool. So if you're a beginner, you don't need to do this. But if you want to go that one step up, this is a really quick way to only adjust certain areas in your photos without affecting the rest. So I'm going to go to the extreme here and make it so that it's very obvious what we're trying to do, okay? So for instance, if I want to, let's say, desaturate everything except for the text up here, farmer's crib, okay? So what I do is that I obviously set saturation to -100 to make it black and white, and apply that effect on the image. What you go to then is you do the view edits, which is the button up here. And then what this does is that it shows you the view edit stack, which is all the edits that you've done to your photo. So in this case, I've done a rotate, a crop, the first tune image, and then the second tune image. The second tune image is where I did the desaturation. If you click on the box here, it pops up this extra menu. And then you got the rubbish bin, which you discarded. The brush is where you apply a mask on the picture. And then you got settings here to readjust your desaturation. So if you ever want to, if I want to show you an example, like if I want to go back to rotate, and I want to adjust the rotation here, you can actually go back in here, hit the settings, and say, I want it to be there, like that, okay? Just to make it extreme. And then what you see is that the picture is now rotated this way. I can then reapply all the various other tools that I've done before. So Snapseed has what they call a non-destructive workflow. So you can basically go back to any of your edits in your workflow and alter it to change whatever you decide to change. But the moment you save this and export it out, that information is gone. So you cannot go back to the image and find those settings again. Okay, so you can only do it while you're working on a photo. Anyway, my point is that in the desaturation effect that we're looking at here, if I click on the brush tool, what it does then is that I can say I want to apply to the desaturation to everything. So I press invert, okay, which applies the red one. You can press on the, I think it's just got the eye, yeah. So this is the preview screen. If you turn on the mask, it's easier because it's all red. You can turn it off if you want to. But basically what it is then you want to say, have I done this right? I want to decrease, sorry. Yeah, so I want to just, this area here, to be with color, okay? So basically what I did was that I erased the areas with the red paint on it. I don't know what you call it, right? So the red thing is the mask, and you're basically removing the mask in the areas around the text, so that the overall effect is that everything is desaturated except for the text. So in the case of the photo that you're working on, if you have problems with certain areas, you can adjust just that one area and use the mask to target that specific area. Okay. In this case, I kind of did like a negative space on it. Hope that explains it.
Okay. So it gets easier, I guess. With that red thing, it's easier to mark the things which we want.
Say again, sorry?
With the red inverted image, we can easily mark whatever we want.
Yes.
Yeah, this one.
So yeah, if you want to do it the opposite way, where it's let's just cancel that because I want to go back in again. So let's do the opposite, where if I'm highly saturating everything, and then I want to only just do paint it in. So in this case, I'll go to 100, or you can do anywhere like 50%, 25%, or whatever. Just to show extreme here, I do 100, and then you can just paint it into this bit here. Obviously, I got the mask on, so it's showing the red bit. But if you take that off, what it does is that it makes the colors more bright. So if I do the original, and this with the edits, right? So you can do it this way. Obviously, the first time I did it, I was doing it the reverse. I was doing an invert, but this is one way to do it, the non-invert way. So if you have that area that you want to correct, if it's too bright, too dark, you want to adjust it and then just apply it to that area only.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Kalyan has a question he has put in chat box. Kalyan, you can unmute and speak because he's not checking the chat.
I'll have a quick look at the questions as well. Sorry.
My question is can we?
Oh, a collage. No.
I
I wish we could do it, but because I always yeah, I like to make collages as well, but Snapseed doesn't do it. You can use a double exposure, but it doesn't do
double
it in
exposure,
a way.
it will not
Same
give
time,
you
you could
the
use
good result.
art.
Yeah.
It
That's
doesn't
what I
do it
use
in a
for
way that a collage would look like. So, no. So I would recommend using an app called Layout.
Okay, layout or grid?
Yeah. I use Layout because it's like, oh, it's a Facebook app, it's whatever. So I just use the same company's app just to make it easy. But Layout works for me.
Layout.
Instagram,
Yeah, exactly. And then there's this grid for Instagram. There's a grid.
Yep.
For grid photos, grid post.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Kalyan, there isn't a collage functionality in Snapseed. You could send them a feedback and say, where is it? I want it. So we'll see what happens. But there isn't one. The double exposure is not quite the same thing.
We have collage option in Google Photos, but I guess we cannot edit the photos which we want to place and the place.
Yeah, it's not very powerful.
That's the bad thing. That's the bad thing about
Which is why I also don't use Google Photos, because there's very little control in it, which is really annoying.
Yeah, and it makes the GIF also, that is annoying at times. We don't want, when we click similar pictures, it turns it into a GIF image.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go off from here. So, do any of you take pictures of menus?
I do. I take pictures of menu.
Yep.
And do you edit them?
Yes, because usually they are in low light, or if it's a single, it's a big picture, we need to make it a little brighter and more visible when we upload it.
Yeah, okay, so I do the same thing as well. So I always edit my menus to try to get any glossy bits. Okay, the glossy bits are really hard to get rid of, but I try to minimize those effects. So I'll do a really quick one of how I normally do it, and I don't think many people do it this way because it's kind of weird. But what I tend to do, I'll ignore about the cropping and the rotation because that's not important here. I'll go to tune image. And what I tend to do is that if I zoom in slightly closer, sorry, this is where I need to pinch to kind of get it to zoom properly. Okay, roughly like this. What I tend to do is that I always make it black and white, almost always. If the menu doesn't have a lot of colors, or it doesn't have any pictures of food, and in this case it's just more or less just text, I tend to just strip out all the colors and make it black and white. My reasoning is that I want to make it look almost like text on a white piece of paper, and that's it, so that it's really easy to read it. So what I tend to do is, like, if you notice, like, the back here is now a dark, a shade of gray. I then start to adjust it to try to make that gray a bit brighter. And it's really difficult. There's no method to doing this. It's more or less just playing around with the settings until you get to a point where it's the level that you want it. It's normally highlights that does it, but highlights tend to also cause other problems. Nope. Let's try this way. I don't think brightness is what I want for. Anyway, something to the extent of that-ish, I guess. Where the text is a little bit easier than the original, I think. There's a higher contrast to it, so it's easier to read. First of all, this photo is not a good photo because the menu is actually quite a big menu. And ideally, you want to take one photo for one page and the other photo for the second page because the text also is quite small and it's hard to see. But this is kind of how I tend to edit a menu. I always tend to make it black and white just to make the text pop up a little bit better and people find it easier, hopefully find it easier to read. I do have an example of a menu with colors. And that one I will actually retain the color because there's a lot of food pictures in there. And I don't think I would do it any justice if I take the colors out. So for this, again, it's all about just making sure that the back bit here is as white as you can get it to be. So I'll up the brightness, up the highlights, play around the ambience a bit. I think it's, this way. So it's just all about just getting that contrast a bit higher, and then the text becomes a lot easier to read on a black text and a white background. If you have a white text and a black background, then good luck because that's really difficult to edit. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so technically we have 8 minutes left. I'm happy to extend it slightly, but I'm also conscious about time. So what I'll do is that I'll finish the workshop and then we'll extend it and talk about other things as well. So the last bit to the workshop is that I want to talk about the photos homework. If I can just find where I am at the moment. So I've got a little bit of homework for all of you. It's very simple. Don't worry. You don't have to do it. If you can.
But we will do it.
Yeah. It's very simple. All you need to do is basically, there's the group album that I sent out, and I've asked everybody to add one photo of food and one photo of building. What I want you to do is that I want you to pick a photo from that group album. Make sure that photo is not yours. Okay, so you pick a photo from somebody else and you edit it. And I want to see what your editing style is like. And again, obviously, this is mainly for those who are beginners, and majority of you here are professionals. So it'll be interesting to see what your editing style is like and how you edit it. And then once you've edited that photo, you only need to do one. You upload that photo into the homework album. So session 2, the homework album is here. I will also add the link to the chat window. So, okay, so just give me a moment. And here. Yeah. Okay, so the links are in there for the homework album. If you upload your edited photo into there, make sure it's not your own photo. And what I'll do is that in the recap post, if I see anything that I would like to feature, I will use that and put it in my recap post. Okay, so I'll do the before and after just to see what the differences are between. So go ahead and do what you need to do. But again, just remember that the whole idea here, the focus is to get photos suitable for Google Maps. So don't do anything stylistic. Don't do anything like crazy fashionable. Just something simple and something that's suitable for Google
Okay,
Maps.
I have one
Yep.
question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Is every photo is need to edit before uploading?
Sorry, say that again.
Okay. It should be need to edit every photo to upload before Google Maps or other to
Oh, no.
that
The
like
answer is no.
connect and other.
Sorry, let me just cough for a brief moment. Let me just mute myself cough. I've been talking too much. So the answer is you do not need to edit every photo before you upload to Google Maps. I actually do edit 99% of my photos. It's only that 1 or 2 photos when I'm just a bit lazy. I just go, I can't be bothered. I'll just upload it. But for almost all my photos, I do edit it. It's a bit extreme, and I wouldn't recommend it because it takes up a lot of time. So I think it's always trying to find a compromise in the sense of what you do with Google Maps and how much time you spend in it. If you spend too much time in it, for instance, let's say editing one photo, and you spend 30 minutes doing one photo, your end result is that you have one photo in 30 minutes. Whereas if you do a reasonable quick edit and you do 15 photos in 30 minutes, that's 15 photos that you get shared into Google Maps. Okay, so you're benefiting Google Maps and you're benefiting the community more if you do the faster way, I guess, of doing it. Again, I wouldn't recommend just simply mass upload tons and tons of photos onto Google Maps because that's also not very useful. You want to make sure that your contributions are good, but you also don't need to go to the extreme. It doesn't need to be a perfect photo. It just needs to be a good photo that people can see and know what it is, and just simple stuff like that. So yes, I am being a bit critical for people who upload photos and the horizons are not straight. It's not that critical because you know what it is, but it still annoys me that people don't correct the horizons. I'm like, it's just there, it's so simple. But again, the correct answer actually is that you should be taking photos that are correct, that does not need any editing. Okay, so again, don't just simply point and click. Point and look at the photo that's in your screen and think about it. It's like, is this how I want it to look? Do I have the horizon straight? Do I have, enough? Is my composition correct and all the stuff before you actually press to take the photo? So if you do it that way, you'll find that you actually don't need to edit your photos very much. Okay. So I think there's a few photos where, let me just share my Snapseed thing again, because I'll show you what I mean by photos that don't really need editing. And I am pointing to my own photos. Sorry about that. Mainly because I do take photos, I do take the time to compose my photos. So sometimes I actually find that there's nothing to edit. I still crop it though, because this cropping is, I still find some of my photos, the crop is not quite right. So for instance, okay, this is an easy one. Okay, for instance, like this photo here, technically you don't need to edit it. There's nothing wrong with this photo. You can immediately upload it. The horizon is not quite straight. People wouldn't even notice it. The colors are fine. The details, like, it's quite dark in here. You could improve it. Again, it's not critical. So if you don't have to edit it, you can straight away upload this up to Google Maps. It's not critical. Whereas if you have, again, there's another example here of this, another shot that I took. There's not much to edit here. The only thing that I would edit out is actually this person here. Because you don't actually need to show that person. The focus is kind of more or less this area here. And this area to the right-hand side here is quite empty or non-important. So not expand, sorry, wrong tool. I would actually crop it. 16:9 obviously doesn't work in this, because if I do that way, I lose the bottom. So I would change it to maybe a 3:2. It's not too bad. And I'll just drag it down. Okay, so it still crops. So I'm not going to use 3:2, I'll use 4:3, which is the original, I think. So yeah. So for this photo, I will actually just crop it to thereabouts. I don't need that person there, and I don't need the ceiling because it doesn't add anything to any useful information to the photo. So for this, I would crop it, but again, it's like you do not need to crop or you do not need to edit every photo before you upload to Google Maps. But if you take good photos, you will find that you don't actually need to edit any. I hope that answers the question. Any more questions out there?
Yes, I have a question.
Yep.
Can we able to increase or decrease the image resolution or photo resolution through this app?
Repeat that again. Increase or decrease what?
The
Increase or
resolution
decrease
of the image.
the photo resolution.
Resolution.
Yes, resolution.
The resolution itself.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't decrease it. So in Snapseed, you can export a photo, and you could change the resolution to a smaller resolution if you want to. I wouldn't. Obviously, it comes down to why you would want to reduce the resolution. Is it because it makes it easier to upload? It uses less bandwidth and it's faster and all that stuff. So it's up to you. If you feel that uploading high resolution photos is slower and it's also expensive because you're using more data, then obviously don't do it, because at the end of the day, it's you who are contributing photos to Google Maps. It shouldn't be at a burden to you as well. So it shouldn't be the point where you're paying extra money for extra bandwidth to upload high resolution photos. So it has to be a compromise. So in that instance, yes, I would probably lower the resolution, but you do have to be careful though, because Google Maps, I think they favor higher resolution photos. Not like crazily high, but if your resolution of your photo is so small that it becomes really blurry, then that's also not useful. So you kind of have to balance it out. But yeah, just I don't know. Like to me, a reasonable resolution would be, let's say 800 by 600, which is like a standard monitor screen maybe 5 years ago. Obviously now the standard monitor screen is like 1920 by 1080, thereabouts. But long time ago it's 800 by 600, and a lot of websites were designed around that resolution. And also, if you think about it, it's like 800 by 600. If you're going to be looking at it through your phone, why do you need any higher resolution than that? And majority of us users of Google Maps, we're on the phone and we're out and about using Google Maps. We're not sat at a desk looking at stuff. So to me, the higher resolution is not that critical. It's nice if you see it on your laptop or your big screen, but I don't think you should be penalized for that. HDRscape, I saw a question come in. Sorry. Tools can possibly increase photo resolution. No, you can't. So HDRscape doesn't. I'm trying to think here. No, it doesn't change the resolution, or it doesn't make it better or higher. All it does is just changes the light areas and the dark areas in your photos. Okay, it doesn't make it sharper as well. It makes it sharper in a way, but not like giving it more information so that you can increase your resolution. So your resolution will still be the same as before, even with HDRscape. Yes, it does make the picture look unnatural. So I do not know when. Oops, not this one. I'm trying to see whether I can find a picture where if you use HDR, it really makes it weird. I'm gonna go for this one because it's got a blue sky. Because I'm trying to look for blue sky, and when you use high HDR on the blue sky, it shows really clearly what's wrong with it. Okay, so yeah, so like this one, this is an easy one. So if I push my HDR to 100%, first of all, you notice that the phone lines, if I zoom in a little bit, the phone lines, the gradient of the sky is not correct now. Actually, zooming out makes it more obvious. Sorry. So you can see that the gradient of the sky is no longer correct because it doesn't know that the program doesn't know that the phone lines is separate from the sky. It thinks it's all part together, so it's just changing the gradient on it. So that the sky now becomes very unnatural. it's not doing the effect that I wanted to show to you, but normally when you do HDRs and on a very high level, you get a halo effect. So anything around the objects here would normally be a white or lighter shade of blue, and then anything else is darker. So again, that to me is not quite natural. I'm trying to see if there's a photo that does the. I don't have any here. Let me import it from my desktop. Okay, I think this one will show the HDR issue. Okay. Yep, that's the one. Okay. Sorry. So now if I do the HDR on this, if I can find it. Sorry, there it is. See, when I say about the halo effect is that you can see these areas around the building. It's a lighter shade of blue. So it kind of almost make like the building glow. And obviously the sky, the clouds just look really, really unnatural. If you ignore the sky and look at the building, it's not too bad. But the sky is just so way off. So yeah, so that's why I wouldn't really use HDR on such a high level. I would probably bring it down to, let me just see, maybe there. So it's only at +5. If you want to, let's say, increase the areas down here, again, you use the masking tool. So I can push it up to maybe somewhere there. And what you notice that if you look at the trees, it's got the biggest effect on the trees. Okay, so what I'll do is that I'll apply that and then go to my view edit stack and just use the brush and I'll paint it into the areas that I want to see. So I'm just, okay, that's right. So I'll paint it to this area to kind of brighten up the trees and also the foyer area here. Actually, this looks quite bad, as in like fake. But it's not too bad. So maybe I just drop it down to 50 rather than 100. So that it doesn't look too popping. But yeah, so, so rather than apply it to the whole building, you apply it to just the trees and the front bit here. So if I go back out again, and if I click the photo, this is the original, and this is the edited version. Okay, so the trees are slightly brighter, but you don't touch the sky at all, and you don't touch the rest of the building. Just touch the certain areas here. So the masking is actually a really, really useful tool. You can use it for all the tools that's in Snapseed, and you can apply it to just specific areas on your photos and rather than everything else. Okay. Filter strength, 30%. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah, you can, let me just look at it again, what the settings are. Yeah, so filter strength, again, is that I base it on, I'm focusing on the trees here rather than other parts of the building, because I know the other parts of the photo, I don't want the HDR to be so strong. I just want it to be on the trees. Again, you could also play around the, whether it's nature, people, fine, and strong. Okay, sometimes I find that a people style works on a nature shot or a nature style works on a people shot. Okay, so don't really just focus on the names, but just try each and every one and see which one works the best. So for instance, if we put people, you can see it actually is not too bad, because what the people does, the style for people is that it tries to make sure that it doesn't make your face all wrinkly, and because with HDR, it makes all the details pop up a little bit more. So you don't want your wrinkles to show more. You don't, all the stuff that you want your face to look smooth-ish. So that's why with the people option, it smooths it out a little bit more. Fine doesn't work. Obviously, in strong actually works better than fine. But yeah, in this case, I think people actually is the best option for this shot, which you think is weird because there's no people in here. But yet, that style works the best for this. Does that help explain it? Yeah, and this brightness saturation as well. With HDR, when you push it up, the saturation also goes up, or the colors look stronger anyway. So sometimes you want to bring it down. The other thing that you may consider sometimes, again, this is not a basic thing. This is more like an advanced thing. Is if you want to play around with drama. Okay, so drama. Basically, what drama does is that it really ramps up your contrast, and then it desaturates your photo slightly. Okay, so if you want your more details to pop out, this is not a good photo to show it actually, so I'll try another photo. I would use this one here. Okay, so with this photo here, if you look at the front bit here, this pathway, it doesn't look very interesting. And drama, actually, I tend to use it more for a black and white shot, and I'll explain it why. But I'll just use drama now, and we can focus on that. So what drama does is obviously the sky becomes really unnatural, but if you look at the pavement here, the pavement becomes slightly more interesting because with drama, it really brings out some of the details and it makes it very contrasty and strong, you know. But it also downs the saturation, so you sometimes may want to bring it back up to normal. And filter strength doesn't always have to be that high. Okay, drama, I tend to use it for black and white, and I'll show you why. So if I change this picture to black and white, yep. And there is a black and white tool, obviously, but I actually don't use it very often. I don't know why. I prefer to manually change things. Let's see. I like to bring out the details. Obviously, it's too dark, the background, but I'm focusing on the pavement here, the tiles. And I actually, let's see. I think that's right. Yeah. So it makes the pathway more interesting because it's showing up all the details into it rather than the original, which is just this, very flat. So I kind of like that bit, but obviously I don't like what's happening to the sky.
Hi there.
Hey, welcome back, Nilo.
Yeah, sorry, I just had quick something to, I didn't know the extension was going on, so.
No, don't worry about it. We're doing
I thought
slightly more
we're
advanced stuff
ending
at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, well, and then I hope I catch it. Owing the fact that I missed basics and then just meet you guys at advanced.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if got anybody else have any more questions about this.
Hi, Adrian. Jason here. One question not related to this specifically, but are you aware of any, I guess it's not possible with Snapseed, but are you aware of any app where we can do a free crop which will adjust automatically, like you might have seen in the document scanner apps where we can just select like free select will be there and it will automatically adjust according to that. So any photo editor with that kind of crop tool you are aware
so
of?
you want it to auto crop to the to whatever the shape is.
No, we should be able to select the boundaries, but it should automatically adjust it. Like, I mean, in the scanner, if you look at it, like it will automatically adjust the orientation also on the same lines as we pull the dots as such. So something similar to documents.
I've not seen anything that kind of does it in a very simple and almost automatic way, where you just say, you know, you move everything and then it just readjusts everything else for you. I've not seen anything that does that specifically. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No
I don't know if
problem.
anybody else in this group here have come across any app that does it or any software that does that. It's definitely useful. because it simplifies the process a lot, but I've not come
I
across
guess
any.
I guess Google Photos has it. I guess I'm not sure because it has many automatic adjustment tools which are applied on its own many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there are also applications where we get suggestions for cropping also.
Cropping?
I guess it's PixArt.
What do you crop that you can't do with Google Photos or Snapseed?
I guess PixArt, there is an app called PixArt. Even that is used for cropping.
Right. Okay.
Where we have that magic wand type of thing. Sometimes if you want to eliminate some side objects, and it is difficult to do with the ratio given in the application.
Right. Okay.
So we can, choose directly because of the ratio gets disturbed. So
Have
here
you
it is
tried
easier to.
have you tried Expand and Snapseed as well as Healing Brush?
Yeah, I've tried expand and healing. Sometimes healing doesn't work because I don't know if we can reduce the brush size.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very annoying sometimes. So
Yeah, because some of the different objects will pop up when we try to heal
yeah.
at one place.
Yeah,
For the
Sorry if
very
my
basic stuff,
background
it
is a
doesn't
bit
work.
noisy. I'm outside.
for
It's okay.
healing part of it, I generally use a app called a Touch Retouch, which is really good, and you have a lot of control also, and it really does a good job actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's a paid app, but not very costly. I use that for removing unwanted objects, or in my 360, I use that for removing the nadir.
All right. Okay. Could you put a link or put a name in the chat window?
Yeah, sure, I will do that.
It's always good to share all this, like what apps are you using and stuff like that, because everybody always uses something different, and then everybody also always vouch for like this is the best app that everybody else use, but it's always different from somebody else. So yeah, Touch Retouch. Okay, I'll give that a look. Thank you for that suggestion. Okay, if there's nothing else that people want to go through, we can call it a day for this workshop. Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you everybody for joining in this workshop. I appreciate that it's basic and it may not be at the level that you're looking for, but I hope
Well, no,
anyway
it's fine. I mean,
it
we
lets you
learned a
fun.
few things, yeah.
Say it, sorry?
I said it's fine, it's fine. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
a few things, yeah. One or two things.
Okay, good.
Been
Just look out for the recap post sometimes next week, I hope. I don't know how long it takes me to edit this video. But yeah, thank you for joining in this workshop. I hope you like it, and I'm always
I had
open
one
to
last
more
question.
suggestions. Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I have noticed some photos on Google, food photos. They are in HDR, or they're very sharp.
Mm-hmm.
So if the food is like a gravy or something, and we want to show the few things which are inside it, but we are not able to do it with the normal camera. So how we can do that?
So could you explain it
Can
again?
we use
It's
the
not sharp
HDR?
enough?
Yeah, not sharp enough. I mean, if it's a liquid kind of food or something thick gravy kind of food.
Right, okay. See, there's certain type of foods that's just really hard to photograph, like soup, because especially when the soup is just a plain soup and there's no texture, there's
Yeah.
nothing to it.
Yes.
It's
And
like,
sometimes there is a dumpling or just few pieces of veggies inside, and it looks like plain water.
yeah. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where you had to be very creative in the sense that maybe make the food shot a little bit more about the background, as in, like, the bowl is there, but you show the background to it and make it a little bit more exciting that way. But yeah, if the food is like a tomato soup, for instance, it's just tomato soup. There's nothing there. It's bland. There's not much you can do about it. I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, because most of the Indian food we have gravy consistency food. Like veggies are usually in gravy form, and we have some pieces of some pieces of veggies or something in that. So it's difficult to picture them and show that what exactly it looks like. Because when I take picture or I try to edit, it looks like a red color gravy with bread. So I don't know.
What I could suggest is that as I don't know, for me, right? Because I consider myself as a aspiring newbie photographer, whatever that means. But I would like to obviously to improve my photography skills, and I don't use fancy cameras. I just use my mobile phone. But what I tend to do is that I always look and see what other people are doing. So, for instance, if you are finding it difficult to take photos of gravy or soup or anything that looks a little bit bland because the natural texture of the food, go and have a look at do a Google search on images and see like how do food magazines cover pictures like that, because when you look at a recipe book, they normally have the pictures of the thing they're making, right? And recipe books tend to have really good looking photos. Look and see it
Yeah,
how
they are
they're doing it.
actually taken using a camera. So it's we can we can just take the details using a camera, but it gets difficult with the phone at times. Even a
Yes, it is.
picture of
Yeah.
pizza I have uploaded, the filling was too much and it had melted cheese on top. So we are not able to see the toppings clearly. I have uploaded that picture in the album.
All right. Okay. Can't help you with that one.
I just hope someone tries to edit it so I also know how can I edit.
It's a really difficult one because obviously if you don't have the tools to take the picture and get all the information from the shot, no matter how much editing you do to it, it's really hard to add to it, if you know what I mean. You can only edit what's there in the photo. It's really hard to add any more extra information to it. So if the information is not there to begin with, it's really hard to do anything with it. I don't know. It's a tough one. And these days mobile phones have quite decent cameras, so don't know.
Yeah, just working with the white balance thing in the phone because sensors we cannot handle them. So sometimes the red tone is too high or the
Yeah.
whitish are too white. So just that time I use the pro mode or the raw mode where I can balance the white.
I find white balancing to be quite challenging. I don't know why, but I just do. Because I'll adjust it and I
Yes,
go like,
yes,
no,
because
not quite
it
right.
becomes green or blue or yellow
Yeah, exactly.
or fluorescent.
Yeah. Don't know. I'm obviously not doing it right, but yes, we need someone like Paul to
No,
come in
but
here and teach us how to do white balancing.
yeah, I keep asking him all the time because when I try to capture white or red objects, my camera, I don't know, it shows very bright or very saturated images.
There's some camera or some phones have settings for their images or their screen that makes it brighter than they need to be. Like I think in a Pixel phone, you can have options for natural or saturated or pumped. I don't know what to call it, the term that they use, but you can have either the both options, either natural looking or saturated look. And obviously, I've chosen natural because I don't want to. If the saturated look makes it look saturated, but it's actually not saturated, then it's gonna confuse how I edit the photos. So it's almost like I need to be able to see it for what it is rather than whatever the screen decides to show to me.
Yeah, for Samsung phone, we have the optimizer now.
Yeah.
So the AI recognizes what object it is, and if it's food, it automatically makes it saturated.
Yeah.
So I just turn off the saturation and I take the picture.
Yes. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's not. That's the tricky bit. I think she lost a connection there. Okay. Oh, she's back in.
Okay, that's all for now. I'm just learning. I'm not pro. I just learned Snapseed by using it little by little. As I said, I missed out on basics. I I don't use shadow tools much because I'm scared it will make my image look bad or something.
Yeah.
I'll
No, but
try more
definitely,
hands on this
I like
tuning.
Snapseed, and it's fun. And obviously, I've got a very specific style. I think everybody has their own style of what they think makes a nice photo. But what I use for my personal style and what I use for Google Maps is completely different. Mine tends to be higher contrast and more saturated. For Google Maps, obviously, I try to make sure that it's not like crazy looking. But yeah, I like Snapseed. It works for me. Google Photos is improving a lot. It's taken a lot of features in Snapseed and making it their own. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next year or so. I'm interested to do a workshop on Google Photos as well because it's come to the point where you can actually replace Snapseed more or less with Google Photos. So it's quite
Yes,
interesting.
it's just that we are not used to using it, so it's difficult. But the recent updates have many new features.
Yeah, the features are slightly different, and also Google Photos on desktop versus Google Photos on the app is different again. So it's slightly annoying. I tried the latest version of Google Photos on the mobile, and I was playing around their method of using perspective, and I didn't actually enjoy that. It wasn't easy to use because I don't know. It just wasn't easy to adjust it. The perspective stuff with Google Photos. Snapseed was doing a much better job of it. But there's certain things in Google Photos, the user interface, I actually kind of like it better than what they have in Snapseed. So I don't know. It's a bit of a mix of both.
Snapseed's perspective is nice. Sometimes I use the auto adjust one, and it really works. Like we do not have to put any efforts, and we just click on that wand, and the image is automatically made straight. If it's just slightly a bit slant or something.
Yeah. It's hit and miss with me. Sometimes it works fine. Other times it just completely goes crazy. I use perspective a lot on menus because I can never quite get the menu correct. You know, the shape and size when I take a photo of it. I use perspective on it.
Yes,
but then,
menus are the most difficult thing to capture because we have to hold it straight or we have to take it in proper lighting.
I have to angle it because the light above me make the shiny bit gloss or the gloss bit shiny.
Yes, and if it's not glossy, it will give the shadow of our own hand or something.
Yeah, exactly.
On the menu.
That's why it's so frustrating.
And the restaurants have this habit of making it dim lighted everywhere, so it's closed, and most of the time it's yellow lighting everywhere, so it's very difficult to get proper image. And their font is also very light shade, and they use very light pastel colors in the background.
Yeah, no, definitely, yeah. Common problems for all of us.
Yes.
Oh, Kalian's gone as well. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Even though it was basic, yes, some points I came to know about basic editing, which I didn't use earlier.
Okay, that's good to know then. Well, thank you
that
to
was
the two of
helpful
you.
too.
The two of you left this workshop. Thank you for joining in, and do keep an eye out for the recap post at some point next week. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Have enjoy the rest of Sunday. All right, see you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Go loco with adventure. Go loco with us. Go loco with adventure. Your unofficial cast to all things local.